Lazy parents found out my new salary before I even had a chance to celebrate it. One moment I was staring at the promotion email in disbelief, and the next they were pounding on my apartment door like debt collectors. I should have known something was off the 4 smiles the cheap store-bought cake. The way they didn't even say congratulations. They didn't ask how I felt. They asked how much I made. And then, with the confidence of people who had done nothing to earn it, they demanded 50% of it. But what happened next, they never saw coming. My name is Lyra Hale, and for most of my life I've carried myself with the kind of quiet discipline, the kind you learn when you grow up knowing no one is coming to save you. I left home at 18 with 2 suitcases, a scholarship, and a promise to myself that I would never owe anyone anything, especially not my parents. I worked late shifts, studied on bus rides, and built a career brick by brick until the day I finally became a senior financial analyst at a private firm in Pittsburgh. People who meet me now say I look composed, long dark hair, clean lines in my clothes, that calm confidence of someone who earned her place, but they never see the years behind it. The years of being told I owed my parents for breathing, the guilt, the emotional tabs they kept like receipts. That night when they showed up at my apartment uninvited, all those years rushed back at once. My mom, Marlene, stepped in first. She always did. A heavy spritz of perfume hit me before her smile did thin practice, the kind she used on church ladies when she wanted sympathy. Dad followed behind her hands, shoved in his jacket pockets like he was hiding something. They dropped the plastic cake on my counter as if it were a gift, but their eyes were already scanning the room, calculating. "So," Mom said, sliding into a chair at my small kitchen table, "your salary went up quite a bit." She didn't ask how my day was. She didn't even pretend. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Yes, I've worked for it a long time." Dad let out a low whistle. "You're doing well, Jess, better than us." And after everything we've done, he let the sentence hang like bait. I'd heard that line since childhood. Every meal, every ride, every school form. They logged it like debts in a ledger. Mom leaned forward, elbows on my table. "We think it's fair," she said softly, "that you contribute to the household. 50% of your monthly income, just until we get back on our feet." They said it like a favor, like a duty, like a bill I'd forgotten to pay. My chest tightened. My shoulders instinctively pulled back, old habit, old armor. Because in that moment, I finally understood something. This wasn't a request. It was a collection call. For a moment, I just sat there staring at them across my own kitchen table. The same table I'd worked overtime to afford. The same table they'd never once helped me buy, move, or assemble. My mother tapped her nails on the surface like she was waiting for a waiter to take her order. Dad leaned back, confident, as if the decision had already been made for me. "That's not how this works," I finally said. Mom's smile tightened. "Sweetheart, don't be dramatic. Families support each other." "Support goes both ways," I replied. Dad scoffed. "We raised you, fed you, gave you a roof. You wouldn't be where you are without us." There it was, the old script, word for word. I'd heard it every time they wanted something: textbooks, rent money, holiday gifts they couldn't afford but insisted on buying. Except back then, I didn't have the spine to push back. But tonight, something cracked. "You left home at 18, Mom said sharply. "We didn't ask questions. You just walked out and now you act like we owe you explanations." I felt my jaw tighten. I left because every time I tried to breathe, you turned it into a debt. A flicker crossed her face. Annoyance, then anger. "You're ungrateful." Ungrateful. The word she loved most. Dad leaned forward. "This isn't optional, Jess. 50%. Starting next month. You make good money. We deserve to benefit after all we sacrificed." "You didn't sacrifice," I said quietly. "You survived. There's a difference." Dad's voice hardened. "We are your parents. You owe us." Something in me snapped clean. I stood up. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just slow, steady, intentional. The chair legs scraped lightly against the floor, soft but final. Their eyes followed me as I walked to the counter. My shoulders were stiff, breathed, but my voice came out calm. "You came here tonight for one reason," I said. "Not to celebrate me, not to be proud. You came to take." Mom's brows pulled together. Dad's expression shifted, a hint of unease surfacing. I opened a drawer, took out the envelope I'd prepared weeks ago before I even knew I'd need it. I turned back to them, holding it between two fingers. "This," I said, "is everything you're really looking for." They didn't know it yet, but that moment, that was when the real story began. Mom's eyes locked on the envelope like a crow spotting something shiny. Dad straightened, clearing his throat as if preparing to accept a prize. They thought they'd broken me down, cornered me into surrender. They had no idea the ground beneath them was already shifting. I placed the envelope gently on the table. Mom reached for it immediately, but I put my hand over hers lightly, firmly. Her eyes widened. "Before you open it," I said, "I need you to understand something. You don't get to walk into my home and demand half my life. Not anymore." Mom jerked her hand back. "It's just money, Jessica." "Don't be theatrical," Dad muttered. "She's always been dramatic, always thought she knew better." I ignored him, stepping back and wiping my palms on my slacks. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed even controlled in a way that unnerved even me. Mom tugged the envelope toward her. "If this is your attempt at acting tough, it's not," I said. "It's clarity." Their brows creased, confused but still smug. That confidence only people with nothing to lose tend to have. "Jessica, we're your parents," Dad insisted. "This attitude of yours, it's what separates you from the rest of us. You think you're above us now?" I think I replied that boundaries aren't disrespect, Dad scoffed. Mom shook her head. "You've been brainwashed by those career people. You forgot who raised you." I didn't argue. Arguing with them was a treadmill, constant motion, zero progress. Instead, I picked up my phone and stepped aside. Dana answered on the second ring. "Everything okay?" I watched my parents hover over the envelope. "It's time," I said. Her tone sharpened, then stick to the plan. Let them reveal themselves. I hung up and leaned against the counter, arms folded. The dynamic in the room shifted, subtle but decisive. Mom could sense it too. Her eyes narrowed. "What plan?" she demanded. "You'll see," I said softly. The envelope sat between them like a quiet threat they didn't recognize yet. Mom finally tore it, open. Papers slid out, crisp, notarized, unmistakable. Not money, not an apology, not surrender, just the truth. A truth they'd signed themselves into years ago. As they scanned the first page, their smirks faltered. Their fingers froze, their confidence bled out in silence. And in that perfect still moment, they finally realized this wasn't going the way they imagined. For a few seconds, the only sound in my kitchen was the hum of the refrigerator. Mom's eyes flicked across the page once, twice, then a third time, each pass draining more color from her face. Dad blinked rapidly like he couldn't get his vision to focus. Their hands, which moments earlier had reached for that envelope with so much confidence, now trembled above the table. This isn't real," moaned. "Oh, it's real," I said. "Your signatures are at the bottom." Dad squinted at the page. "We didn't sign this, we would never." "You did," I replied. 3 years ago. Remember when you told me you wanted to protect my future and insisted on drawing up a declaration? So I wouldn't be liable for your financial choices? This is that document." Mom searched her memory, desperate for a loophole. "We didn't know what we were signing. You understood enough to push it on me," I said. "You understood enough to tell people you were proud I was standing on my own 2 feet. But now that you want money, it's suddenly invalid." The silence that followed was heavy and uneven, like a table with a broken leg. Dad slammed the papers down. "This doesn't mean anything. It means everything," I said. "Legally, financially, morally. You have no claim to my income. You never did." Mom clutched the edges of the papers as if gripping them hard enough would change the words. "We didn't raise you to be this cruel," she said, voice cracking into that familiar performance. "Cruel," I repeated. "You demanded 50% of my salary the night I achieved something you never supported. You came into my home and treated me like a paycheck. And now you want to call me cruel, Dad." Pushed his chair back and stood pointing a shaking finger at me. "Don't talk to your mother like that." I stepped closer. Then stopped treating me like a wallet. For the first time in my life, he had no comeback. His mouth moved, but only air came out. Mom slammed the papers on the table. "We'll take this to court," she snapped. "If you think a few pieces of paper will stop us, You already did, I said. Their heads jerked up, what Dad demanded. You already filed a petition, I said calmly, a parental support petition. I received the notice 2 days ago. Mom's face went slack. Dad froze like someone had hit pause. They hadn't expected me to find out so soon. They certainly hadn't expected me to say it out loud. And before you ask, I added, yes, I saw the fake messages you submitted, the ones supposedly from me promising monthly payments. The number was 1 digit off mine. Sloppy. Mom's breath hitched. Dad took a step back. You committed fraud, I said. You took this beyond entitlement. You made it criminal. Mom reached into her purse with frantic hands. We can explain. You'll get the chance, I replied in front of a judge. Dad's voice rose cracking. You wouldn't do that to your own parents. You already did it to your own daughter, I said quietly. All I'm doing now is defending myself. Right then, the door buzzer rang. 3 short chimes. Dad jumped. Mom gasped. I didn't move. A moment later, footsteps echoed in the hallway. 2 women walked in when I opened the door. Dana in her sharp camel coat and an officer holding a folder. Mom backed away like the walls were closing in. Evening. Dana said, calm as a surgeon. I believe we have documents for the Hales. The officer stepped forward. Marlene and Richard Halem shook her head violently. This is unnecessary. We can talk, Jessica. Tell them it's required. The officer said, You're being served regarding fraudulent evidence submitted in a civil petition and attempts to coerce financial support under false pretenses. Dad's knees nearly buckled. You can't do this. We're family. Dana glanced at him. Family is not a shield when you break the law. Mom's voice erupted into high-pitched panic. She trapped us. She planned this. That envelope, she set us up. That envelope, Dana said, contains a notarized declaration you both willingly signed. You cannot claim ignorance now. Dad lunged forward, voice cracking. We needed that money, and she needed parents, Dana shot back. All she ever got were debt collectors. The words hit the room like a slap. Mom pressed her hands to her face, sobbing in dramatic gasps. Dad reached for a chair before his legs gave out completely. The officer handed over the documents. You'll receive your court date within the next week. When the door closed behind them, the apartment felt lighter, like someone had opened a window in a house that had been shut for years. But this wasn't the end. The courtroom was cold, the morning of the hearing too bright, too sterile. My parents sat at one table, hunched and pale. Mom had red eyes as if she'd spent hours crying. Dad stared down at his lap, jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. Dana stood beside me with calm confidence. When the judge read the list of accusations, Mom immediately burst into tears. Your Honor, we only wanted our daughter to help us. We're in such a difficult place. She abandoned us. Dana spoke up. Your Honor, if I may, she approached with a stack of papers. The petitioners own a property in this city and receive steady retirement income. Their claim of hardship is false. More importantly, she lifted the fake messages. These are fabricated. The number does not belong to Miss Hale, and we have phone carrier records to prove it. The judge studied the documents, expression darkening. Mom sobbed harder. Dad muttered, This is ridiculous. Then the door opened. Beatrice, my grandmother, walked in slowly with her cane. The room went silent. She took the stand with steady hands and spoke in a voice clear enough to cut glass. Jessica asked for nothing from these two. She left home at 18 and built her own life. They never supported her. They drained her. She owes them nothing. Mom's sobs turned into a gasp. Mom, how could you? Grandma didn't look at her. Truth matters more than blood. The judge leaned back and exhaled. Given the fraudulent evidence, the lack of demonstrated hardship, and the testimony provided, this petition is dismissed. Furthermore, the court is imposing a fine for the submission of falsified materials. Mom crumpled. Dad stared straight ahead, stunned. Dana squeezed my arm, not in celebration but in acknowledgement, a quiet victory. Outside, the sunlight hit me like warmth I hadn't felt in years. I looked up, inhaling deeply, letting the weight slip off my shoulders. Behind me, my parents stood frozen on the courthouse steps, small, defeated, and speechless, just like the envelope promised. The week after, the hearing felt strangely quiet, like someone had turned down the volume on my entire life. No buzzing notifications, no guilt-soaked messages, no sudden knocks on my door, just silence. A kind I hadn't realized I'd been craving for years. I moved out of my old apartment and into a smaller place near downtown Pittsburgh, high enough that the city noise turned into a soft hum. I filled it slowly. A blue velvet chair from a thrift shop, a lamp with a warm amber glow, a tiny cactus that somehow refused to die. For the first time, every corner of my home felt like it belonged to me and only me. 3 days after I settled in, a birthday card arrived in the mail. Thin, beige, neat handwriting I recognized instantly. Beatrice. Inside just one line. You chose truth over fear. I'm proud of you. I held the card to my chest for a moment. No theatrics, no guilt, just love, the quiet kind. But peace rarely stays untouched. A week later, another envelope slid under my door. My name, scratched across the front in shaky letters. My mother's handwriting. I opened it slowly, bracing myself. It wasn't an apology. It never is. With people who don't believe they've done anything wrong. Instead, it was a list of medical complaints, emotional appeals, and finally a request for money to help them through a difficult time. No mention of the court case. No mention of the false evidence. Just expectation wrapped in pity. I folded the letter once, then again, then slipped it back into its envelope and placed it in the trash. My hands didn't shake. That same week, I received another call, one I wasn't ready for. Beatrice had passed peacefully in her sleep. The world felt dimmer for a moment, but not broken. Her attorney later told me she'd left me her small home near Greensburg. I didn't keep it. I sold it and donated the money to a local group supporting women recovering from financial abuse. It felt right. One quiet evening, I stood by my window, the city lights stretching across the river like scattered gold. For the first time, I wasn't replaying arguments, rehearsing apologies, or bracing for impact. I was simply free. I walked down to the river that evening, letting the cool Pittsburgh air settle against my skin. The water moved slowly, steady, like it had all the time in the world. And maybe finally so did I. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Quiet, earned, unburdened. I thought about that envelope, the one my parents opened with so much expectation. It didn't hold money. It held the truth. The first boundary I ever set without apologizing for it. If you've ever had to choose peace over guilt, if you've ever had to protect yourself from the people who should have loved you best, tell me your story in the comments. And if you want more real stories about courage and reclaiming your life, because sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's justice wrapped in grace. Silent Revenge.